On the 5th of July 2023, Reddit user named exobiospheric posted a thread on the Aliens subreddit that he was a molecular biologist involved in a top-secret government project. In his detailed account, he describes his work on exobiospheric organisms, or EBOs, revealing insights from hours of alien autopsies and genetic experiments. The supposed biologist details the advanced technology and methods used to study these beings, raising questions about our understanding of life and our place in the universe. Welcome to Damage Control, and this is a Reddit review on the EBO Enigma, Revelations of a Rogue Biologist. People who are not familiar with the recent surge in alien-related news might not be aware of the growing public interest in the extraterrestrial phenomena. This recent interest was sparked by the release of David Fravor's Tic Tac video, which gained widespread attention after coverage by the mainstream media outlets, like the New York Times in 2017. The fascination further intensified following Bob Lazar's appearance on Joe Rogan in June 2019. Bob was a physicist who claims to have worked on a UFO reverse engineering program for military groups. That episode, which exploded in popularity and became one of Rogan's most viewed episodes to date, added significant fuel to the fire. Since then, Reddit's UFO and aliens subreddits have been bustling with activity, ranging from eyewitness sightings and theories to a fair share of outlandish suggestions. As of January 3rd, 2024, a substantive Reddit post by user exobiospheric has amassed over 20,000 upvotes and thousands of comments. The post begins by saying,
"From the late 2000s to mid-2010s, I worked as a molecular biologist for a national security contractor in a program to study exobiospheric organisms, otherwise known as EBOs. The aim of the program was to elucidate the genome and proteome basis of these organisms. Although the study of OBCs has been going on for decades in other programs, the new high-throughput DNA sequencing technologies of the late 90s unblocked stagnant research in the area. Since then, several breakthroughs have led to significant advances in our understanding of the genome and proteome of these beings. What we've learned so far has enabled us to outline some disconcerting perspectives of our place in the universe. Briefly, we've discovered that the EBO genome is a chimera of genomes from our biosphere and from an unknown one. They are artificial, ephemeral, and disposable organisms created for a purpose that still partially eludes us. The reason for disclosing these secrets is quite simple. I believe that every human being has the right to know the truth. That to progress, humanity needs to divest itself in certain institutions and organizations that will probably not survive these revelations in the long term. Unaware that I have very little impact in this regard, but I believe that small leaks are necessary to break the dam of misinformation on this subject. When the government will eventually reveal the secrets, there will undoubtedly be social upheaval, but in my opinion, the longer we wait, the worse it will be. I choose to divulge what I know anonymously out of selfishness for the well-being of myself and my family. I'm aware this diminishes the reach and credibility of my message, but it's the furthest I'm willing to go. I chose this forum because it offers good compromise between anonymity and popularity. In order to protect my anonymity, I will be purposely vague or even contradictory in any information that could identify me, date, education, role, etc. I will even introduce red herrings in this respect."
EBO then expands on his background in getting the job.
I have a PhD in molecular biology. I didn't actively seek out to be part of this program. Rather, it was a stroke of luck that introduced me to one of the senior scientists. I met this person at a conference when I was presenting a poster on my PhD research. Shortly afterwards, I graduated and received a phone call from this person offering me a position. At the time, everything pointed to me working in a regular laboratory. I did a series of 3 increasingly suspicious interviews, each time in a different location, where my scientific background and knowledge became less and less relevant. The first was with 2 of the senior scientists, and the second and third people I've never seen again, who were obviously not interested in science. Sometime after the interview, I was asked to go to a 4th location, where what seemed to be a corporate lawyer presented me with an NDA. He made sure not only to explain every detail, also that I understood the consequence of not respecting it. The first employment weeks were by far the most memorable. Although I spend most of my time in a depressing archive room, it consists almost exclusively of reading about the subject of study and to get us up to speed. There's no secret Wikipedia or even a reference book to guide us. There's only dry reports, mannerism presentations, procedures, and SOPs. These documents are almost exclusively about the biology of EBOs, but there are a few that deal with other subjects such as their food, religion, or culture. There were no documents on their technology. As mentioned above, the aim of the project is to gain a better understanding of the EBO genome and proteome.
And with regards to the environment of where he or she was working from, EBO scientist states,
"Other than scientific staff, there were security guards working for one subcontractor or another. There were no support staff such as janitors or maintenance workers. Scientists were responsible for this kind of work. The laboratory itself is located in Fort Detrick, Maryland, in a building used for legitimate biomedical research. The clandestine operations are carried out in a restricted part of the basement. Contrary to what one might imagine, the biosafety level is not maximal for this type of research. Indeed, the lab containing EBO samples of derived cell cultures is BSL-3, while the lab where assays are conducted are only BSL-2.
If you're not familiar with the terminology, Biosafety Level 3 refers to the stringent laboratory safety protocols used for research involving microbes that can cause serious, potentially lethal disease through inhalation. The famous Wuhan biomedical facility, implicated in the spread of a recent virus, was known to house BSL-3 and BSL-4 labs. The Reddit poster then goes into details about the alien corpses.
EBO carcasses are preserved in horizontal freezers at a temperature of -80 degrees Celsius nominal. To maximize the preservation of these carcasses, they are preserved in vacuum bags and the air in the room is controlled to minimize humidity. There are only 4 bodies and none of them are complete. It's obvious these creatures have died as a result of major trauma. I've never witnessed a motorcycle accident fatality, but it probably looks similar to this. It's acknowledged that there are more EBO carcasses at other locations.
EBO scientist then goes into detail about the DNA structure. In quite verbose language, this is challenging for the layperson to understand, so we've glossed over larger parts.
Their genetics are like ours, based on DNA. This fact was very puzzling for me when I first learned about it. We imagined beings from alternative biospheres would have genetics based on a completely foreign biochemical system, and surprisingly, this is not the case. Several conclusions can be drawn from this surprising revelation. The one that immediately comes to mind is that our biosphere and theirs shares a common ancestry. They're eukaryotes, which means their cells have nuclei containing genetic material, which suggests that their biosphere would have been separated from ours sometime after the appearance of this type of organism. You're probably familiar with the concept of intergenic region or junk DNA. These are basically DNA sequences that don't code for proteins. These are evolutionary residues, transposomes, inactivated genes, and so on. What's particularly striking about the EBO genome is the uniformity of these intergenic regions. We see the same sequences repeated everywhere, and the distance in BP between the genes is virtually the same throughout their genome. The result is a minimalist, highly condensed genome. In fact, it's much smaller than ours. The uniformity of these sequences is a major indication of the artificiality of these beings. There's no complex organism on Earth that has such elegance in its sequences. There's no evolutionary pressure that can lead to this kind of characteristic other than genetic engineering.
The molecular biologist then outlines the anatomy of the EBO.
They are morphologically very similar to the grey aliens that are part of modern folklore. Their height is about 150 centimeters. They have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. Still, there are some notable differences. Skin. The grey skin that is often described in folklore is in fact a biosynthetic film which likely serves to protect the EBO from a hostile environment. It doesn't provide effective protection against temperature changes, but does offer adequate protection against the passage of fluids. The head contains 2 large oversized eyes, 2 nostrils without protuberance, a narrow mouth without lips, 2 ear canals without auricles. There is a mandible, but the musculature is vestigial. There are no teeth or tongue in the oral cavity. The nasal cavity where the nostrils meet is compact and does not rise cranially, but extends axially. Eyes. Like the skin, the eyes are covered in a semi-transparent biosynthetic film that offers the same environmental protection, while providing protection against certain wavelengths and light intensity. When the film is removed, a more traditional eye is revealed. It's about 3 times larger than a human eye, and there are no eyelids. The size of their eyes suggests they have excellent night vision. Brain. The brain is tetraspheric, i.e. composed of 4 major sections. The sections are separated by transverse and longitudinal fissures and are connected to the central lobe, which acts as a brainstem and cerebellum. The volume of the brain is about 20% superior to that of a man of the same height. It has a much more pronounced level of gyration than an average human brain. Moreover, the ratio of glial cells to neurons is slightly higher than humans. Abdomen. The abdomen is wider than the thorax and bulges slightly forward. There is no navel. Pelvis. The pelvic bones are apparent. There are no genitals or anus. The hands have 4 digits, including an opposable thumb on the medial side. They have no nails, and the texture of their fingerprints is composed of concentric circles. Fingers are proportionally much longer than in humans. At first glance, the feet consist of just 2 digits. But a necropsy soon determined that each toe was made of 2 fused digits. Respiratory system. Their cellular respiration is equivalent to ours, i.e. they need to oxidize organic components to produce energy. Their lungs have no reciprocating action, but rather have a unidirectional flow to air, similar to those seen in birds, which is more efficient than ours. The circulatory system of the EBOs is rather analogous to ours. The heart is located in the mediastinum, but in a more medial position, directly beneath the sternum. The heart has 2 ventricles and 2 atria. There is an aorta, a pulmonary vein, a pulmonary artery, and a vena cava. Blood flowing to the pulmonary capillaries via the pulmonary artery is pumped against the flow of air, maximizing gas exchange efficiency. As mentioned earlier, there is no large orifice like an anus or urethra to get rid of biological waste. Instead, there's countless small pores on the surface of the skin. There's a large medial organ called the hepatorenal organ, which acts as both kidney and liver and is central to maintaining homeostasis. Digestive system. The digestive system is extremely underdeveloped. There is no stomach in the familiar sense. However, there is a pseudo-stomach located at the transition between the thoracic and abdominal cavities. This organ is not involved in digestion, but serves only as a reservoir. The sphincter controls the flow of food into the intestine. Given the absence of teeth, the narrowness and rigidity of the esophagus, the absence of the true stomach, and the absence of defecation, it is strongly believed that EBOs could only consume food in the liquid form. It is assumed, given the high metabolic needs of their brains, this food would have a high carbohydrate concentration.
As you can imagine, this lengthy biomedical report set the subreddit on fire after it was originally posted, where it even managed to claim the Reddit front page for a while. And as more people read the story, more people had questions. The thread is currently filled with over 6,000 comments. However, the questions the EB scientist does answer, he or she complains about them being deleted. There's further conversation in the thread from other accounts that messages are disappearing. Some questions that remain in the thread read, Question 1. Amazing story. Have you shared this with the Senate Select Committee or Intelligence, or ARO? And do you have any evidence to back this up? EB scientist.
Thank you. No, I haven't, and no, I won't. It sounds like a honey trap to me. I would not place my life in the hands of politicians. I have no proof other than this message. I know it's not much, but it's what I'm prepared to offer.
Question 3. I haven't read everything in detail, but can you expand on the document on their religion? EB scientist.
EBOs believe that the soul is not an extension of the individual, but rather a fundamental characteristic of nature that expresses itself as a field, not unlike gravity. In the presence of life, the field acquires complexity, resulting in negative entropy, if that makes sense. This gain in complexity is directly correlated with the concentration of living organisms in a given location. With time and with the right conditions, life in turn becomes more complex until the appearance of sentient life. After reaching this threshold, the field begins to express itself through these sentient beings, forming what we call the soul. Through their life experiences, sentient beings will in turn influence the field in a sort of positive feedback loop. This in turn further accelerates the complexity of the field. Eventually, when the field reaches a critical mass, there will be a sort of apotheosis. It's not clear what this means in practical terms, but this quest for apotheosis seems to be EBO's main motivation. The author of the document added his reflections and interpretations as an appendix. He specified that, for them, the soul field is not a belief but an obvious truth. He also argues that the soul loses its individuality after death, but that the memory and experience persist as part of the field. This fact would influence the philosophy and culture of the EBOs. resulting in a society that doesn't fear death, but places no importance or reverence on individuality. This belief compels them to seed life, shape it, nurture it, monitor it, and influence it for the ultimate purpose of creating this apotheosis. Paradoxically, they have little or no respect for an individual's well-being.
Then, a comment by Lucaron, a monitor on the subreddit, reads, "As of 1129 hours, original poster, deleted their account. They refused to provide verification of their identity and or credentials. Several comments in the thread assert confidence that the original poster comes from a background of biochemistry and biology. April Flowers 75 posts, I'm an entomologist. I understood the text and I'm utterly fascinated by the implications here, and I'm also slightly disturbed. A now deleted user also posts, the terminology and precision of this post not only indicate the expertise of the author, but also lend authenticity. Copy and save the text of this post. I bet this will be taken down." We invite the viewer to check the full archive post for themselves, to continue reading the comments and the original post in more detail from a link in the video description. But for now, this has been Damage Control. Please like and subscribe, and we'll join you later with more stories from the other side.